Okay, so we are live. So, hey everyone, it's Dr. Tara, and I am so excited to welcome you to Dr. Tara Tuesdays and to the Dr. Tara community, whether you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube. I want to welcome you to this safe space. If you are watching the replay, feel free to please still leave a comment. I still check our comments regularly. I want to welcome you all for part one of a four-part series that we're doing for the month of February on the topic of self-love. And I could not think of a better guest to invite for this first topic on men in therapy than our very first Dr. Tara guest, Brother Victorious.
Oh, I was first?
Yes, you are our first guest.
Okay.
So we are going to be talking about men in therapy. And I wanted to start with men in therapy as a part of self-care, about self-love, because oftentimes when we hear the term self-love or self-care, men are often left out of the conversation, right? It's mostly geared to women. It's a business that is geared and generated to women. And so I wanted to start with men to give men this platform, because you all are a vital part of the holistic self-care process. And so before we even go there, I want you to introduce yourself to the Dr. Tara community. We are a safe community. And then also talk a little bit about why this topic, men in therapy, as it relates to self-love, is the best love, is important to you.
So I'm Victorious. I've been an educator for about 2 decades. I'm from Prince George's County. That's county. I work in Prince George's County, Maryland, and I'm also a father of a 12-year-old, and I'm the husband of a beautiful wife. We've been married for close to 15, it'll be 15 years in August. And I think therapy is important because for me, it's important for men because, we rarely get the opportunity in a space to just fully express and fully emote. And therapy for me has been life-changing. So for me, I just think that it's something that I like to share and like to get more men involved in, because it has helped me so much in my life.
And so before we even get there, I want to talk to you about just being a man and then also being a Black man. Like just within our community, communities of color, there's often a stigma around mental health. And that stigma is sometimes intensified for men. And I want to talk a little bit about that from your experience, not even as a man, but even you start to get that stigma, those images, even in childhood, what feelings boys can express, what feelings boys are allowed to have. And so just from your own personal knowledge, was that something that you had to deal with as well before you even could get to the point of deciding that therapy was an option for you?
Yeah, I mean, because, the idea of manhood is just wrapped up in so many ideas of, I guess falsehoods around what we can and what we can't do. Because oftentimes being a man is seen as this idea of protection and this idea of strength. And, and strength somehow is attached to this idea of lack of vulnerability and lack of the ability to emote. And coupled with being a Black man in America, right? Like being forced against so many different isms, as many isms as you could think of, it has been a very difficult journey for Black men to be able to fully express themselves and to be considered a strong man, right? A strong Black man. So, I think that the idea of Black male masculinity is so much wrapped in patriarchy and also wrapped up in white supremacy that a lot of times it's very difficult for us to be able to find our own identities and still be considered to be a man and be strong.
So what was this journey like for you, Victorious? I love what you said about that, that opposite ends, right? So being strong and being vulnerable are two things that are not even offered to men, specifically to Black men. And so what was this journey like for you to come into your own, to see I can be both?
Yeah, so I realized, like, going to therapy, that the times when I had to be the strongest were the times in which I was the most vulnerable. And that's when I realized that strength, you literally cannot be strong without being vulnerable, right? Because, as a man growing up, it is very easy to get mad. It's very easy to lose your temper. It's very easy to, to fight, right? It's like, it's not hard, right? It don't take much. It's like, oh, I'm angry. Okay, I'll go punch somebody, right? It's not like you don't really have to like think about, you don't have to be strong in that moment. You just have to be what everybody else told you to be, right? And this idea of like strength and vulnerability, like I remember being in therapy at times and, my stomach being in knots and being able to have to express something or being able to feel something or something that brings me to full blown out tears that I have to express. And I realized like after the therapy session and like weeks later, like how much better I am able to communicate my ideas and my thoughts, or how appreciative I was of my therapist for kind of moving me through a particular thing and how strong I was in the back end, like being able to speak up for myself, being able to, say no, being able to assert myself and understand some damaging qualities that I might be putting on myself, right? So all of these things that I realized that vulnerability like actually equals strength, right? And I learned that through just the process of therapy.
I think that's beautiful. I think, I remember this saying when I was young, like one day you'll realize that being soft is actually a sign of strength. And hearing you say that, I can be vulnerable and be strong. And it's through my vulnerability that I am strong, that you are able to actually see your strength. And so I want to give our community just a glimpse into you. So what event led you to the place where you decided, what, I can explore this venue as an outlet?
Yeah. So initially it was, marriage is the toughest thing on the planet, right? So initially,
I was about to say something.
yeah. Initially it was that, right? Like being able to, being in real tough times, right? And figuring out that there was another way, and there was a space that if we kept bumping heads, there was a space, there was somebody that was a mediator who could kind of assist us in this conversation with one another. And from that, being in there, it made me understand that there's a space that I could have by myself, right? And then I journeyed into, sessions by myself to be able to have very honest conversations with myself. About things that were going on even when I was a child, to when I was a young adult, to college, to now, right? And it just it kind of spiraled from there. Like it was one of those things. Like I'm growing so much in these sessions. I would not stop going, right? I don't I don't see why I would stop if it's just helping me in this way.
One of the things that you said, I want to touch back on. You said being in therapy, it gave you a space for yourself. Do you think that as a man, that is something that is also not really offered to you all? Like I can have this protected space and this can be mine as it relates to outlets and
yeah.
Your own.
So men, the complexities of manhood and then the complexities of Black manhood is just so layered and it's so much, right? Like it's like we even have to put a mask on, or we've been taught to put a mask on the people who actually care for us the most, right? So like oftentimes you see our relationships are clouded with something else that's a distraction, right? So if I'm hanging out with my friends, I have to be distracted mentally from the things that are bothering me. So what do men, what they do when they get together? They drinking, they watching something on the television, they're hanging out in a particular place. They're not engaging with one another in a very intimate and vulnerable way, right? We are taught to like be distracted, right? So we got people smoke, they drink, they do everything but be able to be vulnerable with the people who love them and care about them. And so what therapy does is it provides this space for you to meet you, right? Like it's like, I want to sit down, I want to have a conversation, and somebody who can bounce your ideas off to, who ultimately can give you very good advice on what's actually happening in your brain. So for me, it was space for me to just take care of myself each week. And it's a dedicated time that not thinking about work, not thinking about, the responsibilities I have as a father or a husband. I'm just really focused on me and my productivity and my growth.
I love that two things you said. I love that you said it's a space where you're invited to meet yourself. And then I also love that you said that, it's dedicated time, where you're bouncing ideas. Yeah, Christina loves that too, right? As provides a space to meet yourself. And I want to talk about that because I want to tie it into Christina's other comment about how that also helps you to just redefine strength and even this concept of who you thought you were, or who you were raised to be, or beliefs that you thought you had to hold on to, and being invited to question them for yourself.
Yeah, that was a tough space, right? Because ultimately, when you're questioning who you are and how you became who you are, that means that you're questioning everybody who helped to raise you, mm-hmm. right? And everybody who helped to bring you into the man that you are, and also the historical framework, everything that ultimately created your manhood, or your Black male masculinity very specifically, right? And so that too can be in competition with people who love you, right? Because people who love you want the best for you, right? And they're doing the best that they can do. But when you are able to analyze how you're thinking, why you're thinking, and then you're able to actually see what's toxic and what's not toxic, right? That means that you ultimately learning to separate yourself from certain things or around certain environments or events, speaking up for yourself, right? And then that can be very hurtful to people who love you and who help to get you into the point that you are. So, yeah, but it's when I say that strength to be able to be different in a lane where people expect certain things from you is a tough space to be in, and it requires strength.
What made you keep coming back? I know that one of the things that people also struggle with, and I want to go back to Christina's comment about providing a space for you to meet yourself. Not only is it tough, but sometimes I may not be ready. And a lot of times people just stop, right? Like, I'm too vulnerable. Whoa, the floodgates are opening and I feel like this is too much. What in you allowed you to keep coming back each week?
Wow. I think initially wanting my marriage to work, right? That was first, right? That's what's the most important thing to me. And so we both had a lot of work to do within ourselves, right? So that was most important. And then secondly, I've been to a number of therapists. I'm on my third therapist. And I've had an experience fourth, because I had an experience with two therapists that were not necessarily my thing. And I just was committed. I just really wanted to continue to work, because what ultimately happened was I started to meet myself, and it becomes one of those things where you want to keep figuring out the deeper layers of who you are. And I've just seen so much growth in me in so many different avenues, and being able to jump at things that have been in my brain for years, for years and years now, and not being afraid to take risks. Like, all of these things I attribute to therapy, just to be able to get me to a space where I'm comfortable enough to take risks and fail and, be okay with it, So yeah, it's just seeing my success, and also and wanting to be around the people that love me the most.
When you talk about that, it makes me think about the benefits of therapy. So, but I want to talk to Christina's comment too. It's important to find a therapist that fits you, and I think it's okay to outgrow therapists. I definitely agree with that. Therapy is like dating, right? I mean, you are literally interviewing people that you are going to invite to learn intimate details that people in your life that have known you all of your life may not even know. And so just because you take my insurance, just because you can meet me at this time, does not mean that it's going to work out. And I think, the first rule is that safety. And from that safety, relationships and rapport can build. And so absolutely. And yes, and I think too that, okay, if I came to you for this reason and I've been able to reach this level, then I can stop, and then I can see if there's someone else, or I can come back. I have that right to resume or stop or pause at any time too. But when you talk about staying with it, and I want you to break down like how it's benefited you on 3 levels. So you've talked about it, as a husband, but then also breaking it down as a father. You talked about having a son, but then most importantly, how it has benefited you as a person. So how has this benefited you as a person, a father, and then a husband?
Um, as a husband, I think marriage is about work on yourself and not the pointing the finger to your spouse, right? So as a husband, I've been able to really think about, what are some of the things that I want to be able. I've been thinking about I've had the opportunity to think about my thoughts and where they come from. What are
Mhm.
my triggers? What bothers me? Being able to effectively communicate and not hold stuff in, stuff that I'm still working on, right? Like,
Mhm.
men not being able to emote, you always feel like, you feel like you're weaker to be able to like express exactly what you feel.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it has helped me tremendously in that area. As a father, extremely reflective. Like everything that I say, I'm trying to figure out how it lands. What do I really mean? For example, my son a couple weeks ago was having issues, I think, in school or something. And I said to him, and he does jujitsu, he's a fighter. He has a tournament in California I'm super excited about this weekend. But I said to him, I was like, yo, nobody, school is first. I don't care about this jujitsu. That comes after school, da 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 da. And I looked at him and I could tell something came over his face. And then it made me think, like, what did I just say? And then he got in the bath. I thought about it. I was like, that's not true. I do care about him being successful, which is why I make sure he's at practice 6 days a week, which is why when he has to cut weight, I make sure I feed him a certain thing, which is why I want him to do good in school because I want him to be able to compete, right? So all of those things matter to me. So I had to come back and talk to him like, yo, my bad. Like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that because it's not what I really feel. Therapy has helped me to really be reflective on how my words could be used to cause pain in him and also how I can reflect to actually get better because we're not perfect, right? So and as a person, I just feel so this is interesting, right? The as a person, I really think that my patience is getting a lot thinner for just because you're able to like to see people, right? When people are like egos in a way, or people want to be heard or loud, or just, talking about what they're going to do to whoever and complaining about people. Like, I don't have the space or the bandwidth anymore because I just be like, yo, you need to go see somebody. Like, because in my mind, you're able to see what you were and what you know what I mean? And so as a person, but it also has it annoys me, but it also gives me a lot more patience because you're able to understand what's happening. So it lowers my bandwidth, but it gives me like come on, Vic, like calm down, you know what's happening, just chill out. So I think those are the three things how it's been person, husband, father.
So that goes into Shamia's question. How do you find balance with finding or making time for therapy, your son, your wife? You're also a business owner. You also
Yeah.
have family outside of this. Like, how do you make time? Because, I want to play on Shamia's comment. So one of the things that I often see with women, and we're going to get into this next week when we talk about women in therapy, and you can let me know if it's the same situation that you find being a man. Self-care often has been taught to us to come last, right? If I get to this, then I can take care of myself. Or if and when my body shuts down, then I can do this. And I don't know if that is often a pressure that you feel, but how do you balance it all?
Well, it's sacred time. It's sacred time. I know exactly what time I go every week, and it's sacred. I don't plan anything. It's very seldom that I don't go, or it's just sacred time, and my family understands it as my sacred time. But I got a pretty amazing wife, so like it's what I mean. She values the time that I go. She encourages me. We have conversations about what happened in therapy. But it's 1 hour a week, right? It's 1 hour a week. And if I go to work for other people 40 hours a week, if I'm at home and contributed to my family for, just about the same time, like I can give myself an hour. You know what I mean?
I like if you could go to work 40 hours a week for somebody.
40 hours.
Yes. Yeah. That's minimum.
Yeah, that's minimum.
And
that definitely is minimum for me, right? Like it's definitely minimum, right? So yeah.
I love that. You bring up something else. You said I have an amazing wife who understands. What about men who don't have that? Right? I tell somebody I'm thinking about going, I get clowned, I get joked. Somebody tells me I don't need that. I show emotions, I'm told I'm weak. How? Because that's very real. That's very, very real. And so, whereas you are like levels, there's levels to self-care. Right? You're at the level where I can publicly talk about it and be open about it. Some people, it's I'm gonna send Dr. Tara inbox. Hey, do you have any, therapy recommendations, or or the wife or the girlfriend who wants their husband or boyfriend to go to therapy, but there's a stigma around that. How do you work past that if I don't have that external support in my process?
I think you got to be committed to improving yourself. I think that's where it starts, right? Like when you are committed to self-love and self-growth, like whoever is in your way or whoever doesn't fully understand what's happening, because some people can love you fully, but don't really understand the journey that you're on, right? And so I think that it's just important that you understand your own journey, right? And everybody else hopefully will come along. And then to be honest with you, some people are gonna just not necessarily be the best for you, especially as you journey into another phase of yourself, because therapy will take you there. But I think first acknowledging and accepting your own journey and your own growth, I think is super important. And then people will come along, and then some people may not, and you got to be comfortable with that.
I want to go to Howard's comment. He says emotions are signs of weakness when they control you. What are your thoughts around that? Do you agree? How has therapy helped you understand the role of emotions in your life? Where do you stand on that?
Emotions are a sign of weakness because they control you. When they control you, I think at times, but when I think sometimes people say that when they are considered deemed negative emotions, but when we are fully in love, right, and we are ruled by love, and we are fully in love with our children, and we do things to ensure that our children, out of love for our kids, we do things that just for them, and like when it's associated with love and kindness and fairness and things of that nature, we celebrate moving out of those things. But when it comes to like sadness and anger and all these other things, we kind of frown upon it. I do believe that we need to be very critical in any decision we make. But I also think that if I'm sad, I'm going to cry, right? If I feel like I need to, sit down and be depressed, I remember like, it's very interesting, very good example. I'm building a business, and I've been going through a lot monthly, right? Like every day, every week, monthly, right? It was one day, my wife was leaving out the house, and she said, "Do you want to go with me?" I wanted to go, but I was sad. Something had just happened with the business. It was involving money. It was just a lot. And I just sat in the bed. I literally just sat in the bed. I didn't leave the house. I sat, and my wife came home, and she was like, "Yo, it's a little depressed." And I was like, "Yeah, right." I could have pushed through it, figured out what I was dealing with, made a decision and that, but I needed to feel that moment in there. And then I got through it, and I pushed on, I got up, and I did, what's next. But so I think to a certain extent, I think you can't be out just out here willy-nilly, but I think that there's opportunity and space to allow our emotions to move us in certain ways.
Right. And like you said, to acknowledge what you feel, right? Like a lot of times it is, I feel this and I'm going to push through it. And we have this beautiful brain-body connection that I love to talk about. And your body's going to give into it eventually, And so I'm big on feeling versus fact. Is this a feeling or is a fact? Because sometimes our feelings can present as facts, and
Mhm.
do a little bit of reflection. But I think even that reflection piece comes when I am in tune and in touch with myself, right? To be even able to acknowledge I feel sad is okay, right?
Yeah.
Emotions are neutral. Emotions are
Mhm.
neutral. All emotions have the potential to immobilize you or motivate you. You could have been sitting in the bed all day because you were excited, right? Like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Excitement can turn into anxiety real quick if I'm
Yeah.
not able to, to understand what it's doing to me. I want to go to Michael's question. How do you, as a man, help your spouse understand that your emoting is not you being sensitive, but actually trying to express yourself?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? It, I, I have a wife who's in therapy as well, right?
Mhm.
We don't go to couples therapy anymore. We just go to individual therapy. And I've shown, I just, my wife is, I can't really, I can't, it's hard, right? Because my wife understands that emoting is not sensitive, and that's okay too. And
Right,
so it's real, like all of these things, like as a man, I'm like, yo, I'm okay with being sensitive. I'm
right.
okay with being sad. I'm okay with being weak at times. I'm okay with that. Like I'm fine with that. And and it's so funny because as a man, I'm saying all that. And then the other thing that goes in my head that I'm working on is I would punch somebody in the face too. Like I ain't scared. You know what I'm saying? Like, but yo, I'm good. Like I'm good with being sensitive. There's times when I'm like, yo, I'm being very sensitive right now. Yes. Right. What kills me is men, and we have to put on such a mask. Like men are like afraid to say even to their friends who and what they are. Like every man knows that they soft. Like they want to cuddle up with their woman, like they want to be all lovey-dovey, that they want to be like every man is sensitive and everybody act like they not. But I'm like, you sensitive. I be looking at dudes who super act like they super hard. I'm like, bruh, that's just sensitivity flipped on his back.
Right.
You know what I mean? But my wife, she understands, and I'm cool with it, and we talk about it all the time. If I need
So
something,
what would you do if so answering his question, if you don't, like I said, if you did not have that, and I love it, you can lean into that. I can
yeah,
say, I am being sensitive. I am being sensitive in expressing my emotions because I care about our interaction, right? So breaking down what's sensitive and also what weak, quote unquote, weak means,
yeah,
right?
but that's what I'm saying. But if you need that, like the question is like, how do you, as a man, right, be able to
So he's added another one. So I guess the question is, how do I help my wife understand that being sensitive is actually okay?
keep talking to her?
Mm.
Keep talking to her. Keep having a conversation with her. Keep talking to her. Keep emoting. Um, keep allowing yourself that space, and help her to understand that it's human. In addition to that, you can have her read, right? You can have her read some information. Rock My Soul by Bell Hooks changed my life. Yeah. So you can read books with her about emotions and what it means, and that might be beneficial. Or you two can go to therapy together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's hard to give advice, personal advice, and when particularly like specific individuals and how they move. But I think books and just shared experiences can go a long way.
And I want, if someone can put that in the comments, when I also I also think too. So if I'm looking at this clinically, right? So how do I help my wife understand that being sensitive is actually okay? Also means that when I am resigned to something, someone else having the opposite response to it, it kind of just passes off, right? If I'm resigned to this, if I'm dedicated to this, and so part of part of the work is saying, I'm okay with me having an emotional connection to this issue or having any, like, because we have to break down what sensitive is. And so, Edward, I want to honor your comment. In my opinion, being sensitive is not okay for men. And that's fine, right? But breaking down what sensitive means, because a lot of times people use terms and they don't have a definition for it, right? And so what sensitive means to me is I'm able to have an emotional response to people that I care about, because sensitive also can turn up in anger, right? A lot of people become sensitive when they feel disrespected, but it's just more socially acceptable for it to present itself as anger versus sadness, right? So sensitivity is socially acceptable for men to be angry, but not socially acceptable for men to be sad. And so part of the individual's work is I'm okay with being able or giving myself permission to experience and express all these emotions.
Oh yeah, like with all due respect, like I completely disagree. Because I think that breeds not being able to openly be sensitive, breeds a mismanagement of your emotions. And so, or it also breeds an overexpression of certain emotions. There's time like my son cries, I need to be there with him in that moment, right? It means that I got to be a little bit more sensitive to what he's feeling. My wife is feeling a certain way, my brothers, my mom, right? If my mom is going through something, or my dad is, and this is very recent in my life, my mom and dad have been going through real stuff. I need to be sensitive to what they're feeling, to be able to help them, to be able to understand. That's a key component to being a man. Key component.
So I want to go to Jason's comment before I go to Roxanne. So control self and master emotions. Where is therapy in that part for you?
So controlling self and mastering my emotions, I think that is why I'm in therapy, right? It's to be able to make sound decisions and quality decisions about everything that I'm doing. And also to understand how my emotions, what do I need in particular moments that's leading to decisions that I'm making. And I think that is the master of emotions, and that helps you with the self-control, right? Because every action that you are engaged in is based in an emotion that you're feeling, like you're needing something. And so we move in a certain way. So mastering my emotions has a lot to do with my ability to have self-control.
And then just honoring Roxanne. So I applaud you because men are raised to be strong, unemotional, and high depression and other difficult situations. Would you agree with that? And that goes into some of the stigmas that men have to overcome to even get to this point.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But the funny thing is, it just comes out in very aggressive ways. It comes out with wanting to control environments or control spaces, or when someone is trying to be emotional, men oftentimes can be overbearing. And I think that's what toxic masculinity is, right? Toxic masculinity to me is the inability to fully emote and to fully express yourself. So you just revert back to very cavemanish ways, right? Like, well, man, hear me roar, right? It's not in its totality. I think Andre 3000 is like the quintessential, like that's why he's one of my favorite rappers, is that he has the ability to like do it all, right? And I think that's what manhood is, right? Is to be able to say, I'm fully human, and be able to take care of my family, and be able to provide, and be able to do all of these things that you still want to do while being sensitive.
I want to go to Edward's comments. My wife and children are being sensitive and emotional. I don't have time to be sensitive and emotional too. So can you break down how that works out for you?
What was the example? The funny thing is that we're always emotional. It's always something that is attached. See, the thing is that I think men attach emotion to weakness for some reason, and I don't understand why, but they would attach, like, if I'm feeling, or they attach emotion to like excited, like you have to be excited, or you have to be like wild, or this typical idea of what a woman and child is, like screaming, not necessarily being able to fully articulate themselves. And that's a very outdated approach to like who women are and who men are, right? And so just the other day, I was talking to my homies. We got a group chat, and I was talking to my homies about my son probably can hear me in the room, but I don't. He's growing up anyway, right? So my wife told him to take a pill, right? He's 12 years old, right? She said take a pill, and he's never taken a pill before, right? She's like, "Yo, take the pill," and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't think we should just like make him take the pill, right? Like, because he, like, you know how traumatic that could be. So he immediately my emotions came, and I'm like, my son, like I know that what he must be feeling. And then my wife was like, your father had it, and I'm gonna go get in the bath. You take care of the pill. And then she put it off to me, and I'm like, yo, like I gotta do it now. Like I don't agree with it. So now my emotions are all into it, right? And so I had to really think through it. And then I came out, had a conversation with my wife about the pill, about how emotional this can be, how traumatic this can be, right? So I'm emotional because I'm feeling for my son. I'm also emotional because I feel for my wife, right? Like I want to be able to handle and manage the situation correctly. I had a conversation. We figured out another way that we was going to handle it. And that was that. So this is this idea of me feeling for my son, me feeling for my wife, and also not overstepping her, right? When the decision she made. So all of these things I think are very important, and you're able to manage what's happening, right? For me being emotional.
I'm going to go to a question Mathina is asking for her watch party. And thank you, Mathina, for putting this as a watch party. She says, I don't like going to therapists, and then I open up to them, and then they switch me to someone else and have to start over. What can I do to not feel my abandonment issues and to not feel like I'm getting, and to feel like I'm not getting better because I keep having to repeat myself?
Oh, that sucks. I know that feeling. That sucks. Yeah, that sucks. I don't really have an answer for that. That's tough because you build a relationship. It's just like somebody who's in your life. Like you build a relationship with them. You build a rhythm with them, right? Every weekly, right? You build a rhythm on how you go bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. So it's tough. I don't really have an answer for that. I just, if you're committed to the process, sometimes, you just gotta start over. You know what I'm saying?
I think it has to become almost, I'm willing to do this until I get it right, right? So seeing it as, it's any other relationship. So, and allowing yourself to grieve and even bringing that up. I think one of the things that people often don't be like, I don't have to start therapy with my deepest, darkest issues. I can start therapy with exactly that statement. I'm tired of opening up. Can you let me know how I can open up in this space so that we can build a relationship, right? Like before I even get to anything else, let's process that I've had to go to 2 or 3 therapists, and how can you help me through that grief? That's a loss. That's a loss. Any relationship that has ended or transitioned into something else is a loss.
Yeah.
I want to tie Edwards and Vaughn's statements together because I think they kind of tie in. So Edwards says that, but today they are feminizing men, so real manhood is being destroyed. And Vaughn says, my father was all about suppressing emotional responses. I think a lot of men my age whose fathers had similar approaches often associate being sensitive as weakness.
Yes.
So can you respond to both of those?
What was the first one?
I think today they are feminizing men, so real manhood is being destroyed.
That's a real long answer. That's a real long answer. I believe, this is my belief that I believe that Black women are the supreme being, right? Everybody comes out of Black women, right? So I believe that you want to be as close to God as possible. And I believe that there has been this is Victoria speaking. I believe that there's this flip around this idea of like men wanting control and dominance, right? And this idea of feminizing men. I don't know what that means, right? I hear that a lot, and it's like men are being feminized, and I'm like, what does it mean? Does it mean that we're not going to take care of children? Does it mean that I'm not going to be able to raise a community? Like, what does that mean? Because as it currently stands, this over toxic masculinity is contributing to not the only factor, but it's contributing to the loss of men in our community. Right. So for me, I need to balance this thing out because I work in a school, and I've been working in schools for 20 years, and I see the toxic masculinity every single day. Hyper-aggression, men not being able to show their emotions, violence towards one another, self-hate towards one another, competitive spirit, right? All of these ideas of what white supremacy has bred. And I think when people start doing the research and they understand the balance of the energy that exists within us, I think we'll release some of that ideas of like this idea of feminizing men. I be always wanting to know, what does that mean? And the idea about suppressing emotional responses, that's something that I was raised in. I grew up around all boys. It was a lot of us, and we was, it was this idea of like, be tough, or you're not this, or you're not that. And for me, I think you could be it all, right? I'm not gonna let anybody disrespect me, disrespect my family, disrespect the things that I stand for ever, right? And I'm gonna be very thoughtful about our responses and what I do. But I think everything can happen, right? You can be able to protect and honor your family, and you can also be able to protect and honor them in the home by being present emotionally.
And I think too, one of the things that people often forget is that, let's go back to childhood. Like, boys and girls are born with the same emotions, right? And so, I always talk about it, the six universal emotions that everybody has, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status: joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, curiosity. And so, when we talk about, like feminizing men, or, how it's interesting to me how we got here from a conversation about self-love and therapy. So even some of the stigma, and I think it's a healthy conversation, but I want to pause, because even just the notion of going to therapy triggers, oh no, you're going to show emotions. Emotions are weak. Emotions mean you're vulnerable. Emotions mean you're sensitive. All of which are real things. Like when you talk about, and when you talk about, I can't show certain emotions because other people in my life are showing emotions. One of the things that triggers for me is that, okay, those emotions make me uncomfortable, and so I have to show the opposite.
Yeah, but I understand where that comes from, right? The other part of me is understanding Black malehood, right? Like showing emotions can get you hurt, right? Like, or not. And so a lot of men are emotionally afraid, right? Because they're still afraid that someone's going to hurt them, or someone's. And so I know where it comes from. It comes from this idea of fear, right? Like, if I'm weak, someone will try to hurt me. And I'm also living in a very white male dominated society. So as a Black man who've been oppressed and discriminated against for centuries in this country, Black men are afraid to show their cards. Like I've always been taught, don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. Don't show your card, right? And so I understand where it comes from. But if I can't do that in a place where I'm loved and cared about, and I can't be my full self, then I'm masking myself 24/7. I'm masking myself in this white supremacist world 24/7. And when I come home, I need to be able to be who I am. In addition to that, when I'm teaching children, because I need them to behave in the way they want the world to be and not how the world is. And we'd be surprised when we start to fully express ourselves. We give our people around us freedom to do the same.
So my next question was going to be like, what stigmas do you think men have had to overcome? But you just answered it. And I think just listening to the responses, and I love the conversation. What do you think? Where do you think the permission lies? Like if I have this back and forth about, understanding my emotions, or what emotions am I comfortable in sharing, or if I don't have that support, or, if I have the history like Juan Michael is saying about, this is, I was taught this, like you said, you do not wear your emotions on your sleeve. And then also, I love what you said, Victorious, too. It is not safe to show your cards. How do you get to the point where you give yourself that permission to do that?
Yeah, I think therapy, right? Like you give yourself, you're able to understand yourself, and like you're able to put yourself in a situation like I'm very comfortable with who I am, right? And I know how I'm going to respond in certain situations. I know who is the most important to me. I know who I would live for, who I would die for. I know, you just give yourself permission, and you don't. That's what therapy has helped me to do. I really don't be tripping on how people see me. I just be like, hey, you don't, okay, you can make a decision to go either way you want to. The only thing I could do is to continue to live my life the way that's making me the happiest. And for me, I have not been this clear, and I have not been as happy, and I've not been as motivated and as driven and as focused on my goals ever in my life. And I attribute it all to therapy.
And then you give yourself that permission around the people you love. So I don't know what. So yes. And then as we get ready to wrap up, what 3 takeaways would you say to men who are tuning in, women who are supporting, brothers, fathers, husbands, sons, to allow the option for therapy to be explored? Like, and as it relates to self-care and self-love? What would be
So
your ways?
automatically, the biggest thing that I want is therapy does not equal crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that is super huge,
Amen.
a super stigma in our community. Therapy does not equal crazy, and you can also see therapists who look like you, who from the same hood you from, right? So it's just very important that we normalize the process of therapy. I always liken it to this idea that it's like talking to your friend who knows what's going on in your brain, right? Women always vent to their best friends, call their best friends when something happened or some experience, and your best friend just be on the phone like, yeah, They don't know what's going on, right? Everybody has a desire to vent. I would always say vent to somebody who actually knows what's happening in your brain. I would not judge because I've been to like 4 therapists. I would not judge it off one experience, right? So you might have an experience, your initial experience might not necessarily be that good. But I would give yourself opportunity and the space to try something new or try someone new and try to figure out what fits for you. And give yourself the space to go multiple times. Don't just go like once or twice and be like, oh, I went and it didn't work. Be consistent. And the last thing, the things that are most difficult for you, for me, has been the things that has helped me the most, right? So the times when I had to be completely honest with myself was the hardest thing for me to do, but it was the most beneficial thing for my life. So I had to be able to give myself strength. And so if I were to give any pointers, like the things that you're struggling with or the things that are hard or difficult for you, those are the things that I think we should attack because, I think we come out stronger.
And I would just add, like, you can start with what's easiest too, right? Like, you don't have to, as you're building rapport and giving yourself permission, you can start with what's easy. You can just start with being open to the journey, right? Like, trusting that process too, because I think one of the beautiful things for me as a supporter and advocate and beneficiary of therapy, which we'll get into next week, is sometimes you don't know where it'll take you, right? Because you're coming back to yourself. And so in that journey, you're gonna like, oh, I thought I was coming to talk about this, but now we're on this, and being open to the process that is gonna all lead you back to yourself.
Yeah.
Anything else, Victorious?
Nah, I really appreciate people tuning in and asking questions. That was dope. I really enjoyed that.
The Dr. Talk community is dope. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and thank you for being on here. I love your insight. I love your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your experience and sharing your truth and answering the questions and comments truthfully and authentically. For those of you who tuned in, please join me next Tuesday. We're going to be continuing our self-love is the best love to give the women a chance. We're going to be talking about women in therapy. And
I keep putting that song in my head.
yes, thank you all so much. And as always, let's feel together. And Yvonne says, thanks, friends. Y'all are the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Peace.